In this video, I'm going to go through the chords and keys of the Beach Boys song, God Only Knows. Now, the chords in this song are quite complex in the sense that they often resist being boxed into a single key. So exactly what key the song is in at any given moment is often quite ambiguous. Let's go through it a step at a time and you'll see what I mean. So we begin by shifting back and forth between an A major chord and an E major chord. At first, this seems very simple. The first chord is A major, so we're in the key of A major, going back and forth between the tonic and dominant chords. However, the French horn melody complicates things. Specifically, this D sharp does not belong in the key of A major, but it does belong in the key of E major, suggesting that that is the key that we are actually in. When the upright bass enters, the notes it plays against the A and E chords changes the overall chords in the sequence. But even with these changes, all the chords still fit into our two possible keys. But due to the horn melody, I would say we are in the key of E major. A compromise between choosing A major or E major could be to say that we are in the A Lydian mode, which is basically the key of E major, but with A as our tonal center or chord 1. But let's just call it E major to keep things simple. Now these two chords at the end of the intro don't really belong in any key. They're just part of a transition which moves us into the next section. Beginning with this A with an E in the bass, we keep this same second inversion chord shape and climb up 4 steps to the first chord of the next section. Now, based on the first 3 chords, it seems like we might be in the key of D major here. After all, D is the first chord, and these chords fit nicely into that key. But take a look at this B minor 6th chord. Now the 6th in this chord is a G sharp, but D major doesn't have a G sharp, it has a G natural. So it's more likely that we're in the key of A major, which does have a G sharp and also contains these 3 chords. If we assume we are in the key of A major here, then once again, we begin a section with chord 4, just like the intro. Now this F sharp minor 7th chord is a pivot chord, meaning it links us between 2 keys, A major and E major. So we're back in our original key of E major. Our entry into this key begins with a standard 2-5-1 chord progression. However, it doesn't really sound standard because of the inversions used, particularly the B7th with the 7th in the bass, and the E major with the 5th in the bass. So it sounds more like this. Next, we get this D sharp diminished 7th chord. Now, if we take this D sharp diminished 7th chord and lower the 7th, we get B7th, which is chord 5 of the key we're in. Another way to look at it is by beginning with the B7th chord. Now this chord has 2 Bs in it, the low B and the high B. If I take the high B and raise it 1 semitone, I get a B7 with a flat 9. So this is a spicier version of your standard dominant chord. Now, if I take that other B, the lower B, and remove it, I'm left with the D sharp diminished 7th chord. So as you can see, the D sharp diminished 7th chord and the B7th chord are very closely related. So here, the D sharp diminished 7th chord is functioning as a chord 5. It's implying the B7th chord without actually playing any B notes. It then predictably resolves to chord 1. Next, we have this C sharp minor chord, which is chord 6 in the key of E major and chord 3 in the key of A major. However, there's something strange about this C sharp minor chord, and that is this added A sharp in the bass. Now, A sharp does not belong in either the keys of A major or E major. So what is it? It's simply a passing note between the E major chord and the A major chord. Hear how it steps down? As for how this A sharp fits into our C sharp minor chord, well, we could think of the A sharp as the sixth in a C sharp minor sixth chord. So what we actually have is a C sharp minor sixth chord, but with the sixth appearing in the bass. We don't really need to write this little sixth though, because that information is already shown in the slash A sharp. The other way to think of this chord is as a minor 7 flat 5 chord, also commonly known as the half diminished seventh chord. And this is actually the standard label that most people would use to label this chord, especially when not in this specific context. Notice they have all the same notes. They're exactly the same chord. The only difference is which note we perceive as being the tonic, or the first degree of the chord. We could also call it B flat minor 7 flat 5. It's the same chord again, just the notes are labeled differently. G sharp is the same thing as A flat, E is the same thing as F flat, C sharp is the same thing as D flat, and A sharp is the same thing as B flat. So we can call this chord a C sharp minor with an A sharp in the bass, or B flat minor 7 flat 5, in which case we can label it as a flat 5 half diminished chord in the key of E major, or A sharp minor 7 flat 5, labeled as a sharp 1 half diminished chord in the key of A major. I prefer the C sharp minor option because it fits most neatly into our key. Also, a C sharp minor chord is actually what the guitar plays in the original recording. The A sharp only appears in the bass instruments. And if you just play a straight C sharp minor chord in this progression, it actually fits quite nicely with the other chords. The world would mean nothing to me, so what good would living do me? Now, all this aside, the reason this chord works so nicely between the E with a B in the bass and the A major chord is down to silky smooth voice leading. Half the notes remain the same between these chords, and the notes that do move only move to neighbouring notes in contrary motion. Next, we have the titular refrain, God only knows what I'd be without you, which uses the same chords as the intro. However, this time there's no horn melody, so it really is quite ambiguous as to whether this section is in A major or E major. It's really up to the listener. Both options are valid. God only knows what I'd be without you. Then we have these transitional chords again, which work the same way as they did in the intro, bringing us to the beginning of verse 2. Now at the end of verse 2, we don't have these two transitional chords. Instead, the A with an E in the bass becomes chord 1 of the interlude section. This interlude section is in the key of A major, which we are arguably already in, coming from the refrain, but it soon switches to the key of C major for a series of descending chords that end on this D major chord, which is not in the C major key. I think of this chord as chord 4 of the A major key, which is the key we go back to on the repeat of this section. Then the second time through, I think of this same chord as chord 1 of the D major key. Why the D major key? Well, that's the key in which the subsequent instrumental verse begins. We then move to A major, and then the refrain section, which can either be thought of as A major or D major. Now, I should make it clear that this instrumental verse section is identical to the other verse sections, except the whole thing is shifted up a fourth. So D becomes G, B minor becomes E minor, etc. but all the chord functions remain the same. Now at the end of the instrumental verse, we go back to the regular verse, so everything shifts back down a fourth. But this transition is absolutely seamless. This is partly because at the end of the instrumental verse, we are arguably already in the key of A major, which is the key in which the regular verse begins. In addition, look at the last chord in the instrumental verse, B minor 7th. And then look at the first chord in the regular verse, D with an A in the bass. Most of the notes are the same. In fact, the only note that changes is the B dropping down to an A. It's one of the smoothest transitions between sections you'll ever hear in a song. It doesn't even register to the casual listener that we've just dropped down a whole fourth between these two sections, because these two sections just flow together so naturally. Beautiful. Now this final verse is the same as previous verses except for the refrain. An extra E chord in first inversion is added, and then this sequence of chords is repeated until the end of the song, about 6 times until the song fades out. So, here are the main sections again, and the 4 keys the song dips into along the way. Now that we have the whole song in front of us, the final thing I want to point out is the sheer number of inverted chords, by which I mean chords that don't have the tonic in the bass, but instead the 3rd, 5th, or even 6th or 7th. Look at them all. It's the majority of the chords in the song. This further adds to the ambiguity of what key the song is in at any given time, because we rarely ever get a chord 1 in root position, which makes them sound less like a stable tonic chord. Now I have 2 more God Only Knows breakdown videos, one where I analyze the song's structure, so verse, chorus, etc., and another where I look at the instruments and voices used in the song and how they are combined in different ways to create variation and maintain interest throughout the song. I also have a video showing you how to play God Only Knows on guitar, if that's something you're interested in. And remember, like and subscribe if you got something out of this video. God only